Okay. Okay, and then this little guy? No, this one with the little, with the, okay, Vanessa Love. So do I have to type her, just scroll or what? I don't know where Vanessa Love is. Okay. Well, you wouldn't invite. Invite. And then, oh, I saw her somewhere over here. Sent. Vanessa Love would like to be a guest in their broadcast. Okay, so I don't know what's happening now. Is she trying to do it from her desktop?
Ask her, I don't know.
It's to be in your video. Approve. Approve. Oh, add. Thank you.
All right. Oh, that doesn't work. All right, hold on. That nope. That's not the way that should go. Oh gosh.
You're good.
Now that I'm live, I can't. Oh, there we go. Okay. There we go. All right. Got it.
Yay.
Now I'm not in a position on your screen. Okay. All right. There we go. All right. So, yay, we figured it out. Yay. And how are you doing?
Great. Glad to be here.
Oh, great. Yay. So, yes, do you want to say a little bit about the Silicon Valley Men's Center?
Sure. Can I just read the mission statement? Okay, great. So I've got that ready.
Of course.
So SVMC is an entity that promotes emotional health in boys and men. It promotes authenticity, emotional intelligence, and mindfulness, and supports the concept of Tina Girl for boys, just as we have Tomboy for girls. Supporting emotional health for boys and men will help increase emotional intelligence, decrease aggression and depression, and have positive ripple effects on individuals, couples, families, and society. So there you go.
That's true. That has actually been studied and proven that actually, wait, no, it was mentioned in one of the studies that I was looking into, that it said that if men are able to kind of get that emotional understanding, that it would be better for women and society.
Yeah.
So
we're all in this together.
Cool thing. Yep. So yep. So I think our talk will probably go on for 30 minutes. I know we have so much, and I only wrote down 2 questions, but I think in those 2 questions, that there's such, it's not broad, but it's just, there's so much detail in those questions that we can definitely
I know.
so much. So yeah, so what do you feel are the issues facing young men today?
I think part of it is just the traditional stuff of, getting the good grades and worrying about college and worrying about career paths and all of that. I think that's definitely still the same, in a competitive job market, quickly changing technologies. So I think you've got some kids that are definitely, on the college track, and then others that that aren't. And it's like, well, how do they find their niche, So I think that's a big part of it.
Right.
And then the second, I was thinking about this, Vanessa, and it's like, I was kind of thinking, I think for boys today, it's like it's confusing between the old model of masculinity, or the more traditional model of masculinity, and the more modern, model of masculinity. And so I think with so much social media and so much commercialization out there, I think it is, confusing for boys. And I think just to find who they are, what they're good at, what they feel good about doing, and how they can kind of make that work, make a go of it. I see those as challenges.
Right. I also get the sense that we have to change, we have to rethink elementary schools because they're not really hitting the like just nurturing kids in a way that is actually kid friendly, and
Right.
sometimes not even boy friendly, because like it's sit down and do this work that you may or may not be interested in, and just thinking about people who have ADHD and how if they're interested in something they will go into every detail about it, but if they're not interested in something they will never be interested in it. You cannot just be like, no, I mean, just sit down, just sit down, just listen to what I
Right.
gotta say. Like they can't, like
Yeah,
that's not how their
absolutely.
brain
Yeah, I
works.
looked into that
Yeah.
too. I've been doing
Yeah.
some research, and they're saying that, school is starting sooner now. That kindergarten is what first grade used to be, and girls are more verbal and they're more language oriented. They're ready to read sooner than boys are, so that puts boys at a disadvantage right away.
Mm,
And then just to
right.
me, I don't know. I was asking my husband. I'm like, when you were in school, did you guys have physical education? We did. It was a big part of the day
Mhm.
is for boys to be able to run around and be physical. And I agree with you. Sitting for like 5 or 6 hours
Right.
a day, oh my gosh, for a 6-year-old, that's hard. You know. So I actually found this. I found this
Yeah.
great this
Yeah.
great website, Vanessa, called buildingboys.net. And the founder has 4 boys, and she's a writer. And so I've got some main tips here from 7 ways teachers can make school better for boys. So I don't know if you want to go into that now or not, but it was just like,
Oh yeah,
okay, so
definitely.
so she just had
Yeah.
like 7, kind of main points. So it's like the first one, say yes to poo and guns. And it's basically kids are more likely to read if they get to choose the topics that they are interested in, and not be
Right. Right.
so fussy about perfect penmanship or perfect grammar, but concentrate on communication, on the message. We're telling stories here. We're learning
Right.
things.
Right.
That's how boys engage. The second bullet point was move, and you and I just talked about that. Don't stop kids who fidget. Let them wiggle their leg or play with their stress ball or
Right.
whatever. As long as they're not disturbing, the whole class,
Right.
just
Right.
let them move. Um, the third
Right.
thing,
Right.
put
Oh
down the
yeah.
books and pencils. And here's what she's saying about the youngest students' brains aren't developed enough yet for reading and writing. Focus on the point of reading and writing, which is communication. Focus on reading and writing as a
Mm,
way to share information and stories. So I really I like that. The fourth, invite
yeah.
men into your room. And my husband and I have talked about this too. The world of education is overwhelmingly female, and little boys may feel,
Yes.
it's not just a guy thing. It's just not their thing. But boys historically have
Right.
learned
Right.
side by side from men. So she's saying, have men come into the classroom, have them read, have them tell a story, have them talk about their jobs, and the skills that they have, and what they're doing.
Yeah.
The next bullet point was learn to love
Right.
boys. And she's like, take time to learn about boys, how they develop, what makes them tick, the challenges they face at school and in the community. And this one, I kind of resonate with this because I'm such a tomboy. Boys know when teachers like boys, and which teachers think boys are trouble. So it's just, again, us as parents, teachers,
Uh,
coaches, we have to watch our stuff, right? Our body language, the way that we, interact with
right,
kids.
right.
And then 6, offer profuse but real praise. And she's like, most boys want nothing more than to please you. Um, and then she
Oh yeah,
catch
yeah,
them when
they
they're doing
do.
something good, right? not just always yell at them
Right,
when they're
right.
doing
Oh yeah,
something that
yeah.
bugs you, but compliment them when they're doing something good. And then she said also that some boys are extremely sensitive to criticism. And she says a boy will raise his hand once. If he gets the answer
Mm,
wrong, how you reply to him is critical. Because if he feels devalued or humiliated, he will not raise his hand again. And then she
gotcha.
goes on to say the boy's biggest complaint about school is, when will I ever use this? Now, I grew up a girl, and a lot of the times I was asking that too. It's like, well, what the heck am I going to do with this? So
What am I doing
yeah.
this for?
So
Yeah,
she said,
yeah.
boys love to do useful things. So bring the real world into the classroom whenever possible. Bring car parts into the classroom. Have an
Oh,
apprentice week at school. That kind of
oh
thing.
yeah.
So those were some tips that I got from that site, and I just thought they were really good.
They are really good. Now you've worked with some of like the young offenders. Like, do you find that some of them had like those early on experiences at school that just disconnected them from school?
Um, I think, like you said, if there's compound, I think if there's a variety of issues, if you do have a student that has learning
Oh yeah.
disabilities, and maybe they have a dysfunctional home situation where there aren't good boundaries, there isn't good supervision, and that kind of thing, then school is going
Right,
to be
right.
hell for some of these kids. It's just not a happy environment for
Oh
them.
yeah.
So yeah, that's part of it. And what I always asked when I was
Right.
working with these kids, is that I wanted a psych eval so I could look at some of the family background and whatnot, and then also to see if they did have a learning disability or if they did have something that was making school hard for them. And I always push for,
Oh, gotcha.
individualized education plans and that kind of thing. Absolutely.
Yeah, the IEPs. Yep, yep, yep. And I think for the emotional wellness of boys, it is that like understanding and helping them to understand their emotions. And because I've noticed that people who come from dysfunctional families only see anger as a negative thing instead of seeing anger as something that you can say, okay, I'm angry about this situation. Now I'm gonna go do this other thing and not, like do something destructive, you know,
Right, right.
like
Yeah,
yeah,
at one point,
bad destructive. I mean, sometimes there's good destruction.
yeah,
So
and at one point I
yeah,
was interested in writing a book called Good Anger. So I had gone through a divorce and I was feeling pretty angry and conflicted myself. But I thought of the same thing you did. How can you take that anger and turn it into something positive? So we have movements like Mothers Against Drunk
right,
Driving. Okay, to me that's a mother lost her son. What does she do with that anger? Do something positive, educate, raise
right,
consciousness, change things. So yeah, yeah, I think getting back to with boys, and another one of
right.
the handouts that I like is 11 words you need to teach your son before he turns 6. And so again, it's communicating with your
Huh.
kids, right? So um, especially for boys, because boys can sometimes be more physical. Like you said, it's like, okay, let's kind of tamp down the impulse control here. Let's think a
Right,
little bit. Instead of hitting someone, use your words,
right,
right? All of
right.
us female teachers use your words. So, the 11 words that
Right,
she,
right. I I have a funny story about that. I worked in a hospital and there was this kid and we were always like, use your words, use your words, use your words. And he was like, I feel like punching that kid. And like usually if there was like someone else there, they would have been like, you can't say that. Which I'm like, how are we supposed to be like, use your words? Oh, but you can't say that. I was like, I'm glad you use your words. Because like I knew that any other person would have said, you can't well, you can't say that, you know, like, of course you feel that way. I also have had clients who have been diagnosed early on with ADHD, and but they had dysfunctional family dynamics and they had early childhood trauma. And I was like, I don't know if this is really ADHD or if this is actually trauma, but it's coming out as psychomotor restlessness, like the rest, you know, the like, you know, have to keep moving, you know, type of stuff, because like that is a very hard line to like be like, well,
Yeah, no,
yeah, you know.
absolutely. Hypervigilance. Yeah, I agree with
Yeah.
you totally. And here again, getting back to education,
Right.
I just don't think that teachers get the training, when they're going through their student teaching, or I did this, 100 years ago, but in working with kids with trauma, because you're absolutely right. It's that hypervigilance. It's that,
Mhm.
that high startle response. They're always keyed up, and um, teachers misinterpret that, as the child being disruptive or oppositional or whatever. And then anyway, so yeah, you're
Oh yeah.
absolutely right. And then another thing,
Yeah. And those labels follow them, unfortunately, and then can just, you know, make that, like, make them feel like I have something terrible, especially if they start going on
that's exactly what
medication
I was going to
fairly
say
early
too,
on.
is that a lot of boys, I've got some other statistics
Mhm.
that a lot of boys are medicated much more than girls are, just because of their behavior, because they are very active. So yeah, this is
Oh
from
yeah.
another
Yeah.
site. Let me run. It's like the boy code is failing our
Mhm.
boys. Boys are 2 times more likely than girls to be expelled. Boys are 30% more likely than girls to fail out of school. Boys are 4 times more likely than girls to be prescribed a stimulant medication for a behavior disorder. So there you
Yeah.
go. Depression in males is often masked by
Right.
anger. 4 or more US boys commit suicide every day. So yeah, our boys are
Ugh.
struggling.
Right. And oh my gosh, I just had something. It was about and also like sometimes depression in men and maybe boys is like something that's socially approved of, like workaholism, you know. Oh, if you're working all the time you must be doing something productive, instead of, oh, you must be avoiding being alone or being in a crappy family situation or whatever it is that makes them, you know, just kind of choose to have these as their symptoms and not, you know, like the stereotypical depressive symptoms that therapists are looking
Right,
for.
right. Yeah, and I think you and I were talking last week about depression, and just in general with men not being able to express all of their emotions. And if they're told early on, be a man, act like a man, man up, don't be a sissy or whatever, it's like, well, what do they do with those
Yeah.
emotions?
Yeah. Don't feel sad, don't feel
Yeah,
angry.
and you and I were saying,
Yeah.
well, that's either going to go internal as depression, or coping mechanisms
Yep.
as drugs or alcohol, or those tamped up emotions are going to go external, which could be, anger management issues or domestic violence. So those feelings have to go somewhere. And
Right.
it's very unhealthy, you know,
Yeah.
when men can't express their feelings and their emotions. So
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And the one of the articles that I read for my class last semester was about um, something called like gendered um, like seeking help, but like if you identify as more masculine, or like they had the whole like um what you call it, survey that determined how, you know, on what scale were you like more masculine, um yeah, according to that scale, like how likely that person was to look for help. And the first person that they were going to was their doctor. They were not going and searching for a
right.
therapist right away, because that's seen as female, like that I mean, you know, again, it's a more female dominated field. And you know, they may or may not have someone who understands depression doesn't always look the same, and there's not a lot of just, hey, why don't we focus on men's health and men's mental health, because that, as you've said, when we were talking before, like there can kind of be a backlash against, hey, why don't we focus on men?
Yeah, definitely. That's as when you and I were talking, I was saying, I always encourage, when I go out to Kaiser, to our medical facilities, it's like, you guys have got a women's clinic. Yay. But you also need a men's clinic. I
Right.
mean, men have prostate issues, men have
Yes.
depression, postpartum depression, a lot of things that people don't even think about, or like you and I were saying before too, sexual abuse. I mean, it's terrible in this country
Right.
that one
Right.
in four adult
Yes.
women have been sexually abused as children. It's also equally appalling that one
Right.
in six men have been sexually abused as children. And like you were saying, are doctors trained
Right.
to check into that? When a male client goes and they're reporting troubles, sexually or in their relationship, or they're depressed or whatever. And I'm not saying
Oh
that you can
yeah.
always
Yeah.
perfectly, figure everything out, but I think being able to
Right.
open
Right.
that discussion, I think, like I was sharing with you, the last time that
Oh
my
yeah.
husband went for his physical, they actually asked him, "Do you feel safe at home? Do you feel threatened? Is there any violence
Mm.
in your home?" And I'm like, "Yay!" That's one of the things that I've been talking about
Yay! It's being
the
asked.
entire
It's being
time.
asked. Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of
Yep.
men,
Now, if we can only get, the mental health field, like talking and,
yeah, yeah,
looking
and I'm
into
sure a
it,
lot of men,
I'm just glad that the Journal of Mental Health, or the Journal of Men's Health, did have a mental health issue. Like, woohoo,
yeah,
yay! We can talk about some of this
yeah.
stuff.
So I don't
Yeah.
know. To me, it shouldn't be, us against them, or, women. Whatever,
Right.
everyone should have, good mental health and good counseling, and
It,
I don't know.
it it's derisive, like, yeah, I think that, sometimes when people do decide to focus on issues that are related to male issues, like, or to men, that, like, some people feel like that's an attack on women, and that, like, we just end up not caring or something. And it's like, listen, we're therapists, we have big hearts, we're very compassionate, and we're compassionate for people who are suffering. And, we're noticing that men and women suffer differently, and it's okay if we focus on this thing just a little bit. It's okay if we focus on this
Right,
thing just a little bit, and, it doesn't have to completely,
right, and
separate
and yeah,
everyone.
and I
Yeah.
was thinking a couple of things along those lines is that, um, a guy can like football, but also maybe enjoys knitting, and does that make him any less masculine or whatever?
Mhm.
No, it's just those are two things. Maybe knitting
Right.
relaxes him, and maybe football excites, whatever it is. So I think these strict
Right.
gender,
Right.
gender boxes that we put people in, um, I'd like to see that
Right.
relax. And then the other thing too that I was thinking about, you and I were talking about these kind of subsets, these extremes, like the incels, like that
Oh
particular
yes.
movement,
Yep.
or maybe radical
Yes.
feminism, whatever.
Yep.
Those are extremes. They
Oh
have a
yes.
voice, that's fine. But again, it's not fair to lump their ideologies in with everybody else. And then also, as a therapist, I often think
It's
about,
true.
well, what do we do with psychopathy? I mean, there's a difference, like you and I were saying, there's a difference between a teenage boy fumbling
Right.
around at a school dance and touching inappropriately, as opposed to a hardcore predator that is out to, take advantage of someone.
Oh
So
yeah.
that piece gets in my head too. And I'm like, huh, how do we parse that part out? Because some men do behave badly, and
Oh
some
yeah.
women do
Yeah.
behave badly, and it's like, how. So
Right. Oh yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
like you said, it's
Well, and also what we had talked about was like, people need a place to express their frustrations with society and societal, um, pressures and things like that. With the incel community, it's, have a girlfriend, eventually have a wife, get married, or yeah, get married, like have a house, have all of these things, have a job. And like sometimes it just doesn't work, and it doesn't work the way that they want it to work, and it's not anything that's just I mean, it's a complicated issue obviously, but it's just like, okay, but they need some place to feel frustrated, and it should be perfectly fine if they go online and they're just like, ah, you know um, and hopefully, eventually they'll come back around and be like, okay, I got my frustration out. I felt heard. I found a community of people who understood exactly what I was saying. And now I can go on and, hopefully be productive in the world and less angry, hopefully. you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, and I don't know. I guess it's just
yeah.
people deal with things differently. When I was first reading about men feeling unattractive, and because they don't feel that they're physically attractive,
Mm,
that women wouldn't be interested in them and that they would feel rejected and all of that. And
yeah.
I was like, dang, I think a lot of us go through that at certain times in our life. I mean, when I was a teenager, I had
Oh,
bad
God.
skin, I had braces, I had glasses, and I was like, screw this. I'm not going to be the prom queen. I'm going to concentrate on being smart. And
Right.
you go to, you have to work with things and do your best, And anyway, instead of blaming, I didn't blame boys,
I,
because they didn't want to date me or whatever. It's
right.
like, I need to figure it out.
Or blame society pressuring you to date or
Yeah,
whatnot. You kind of waited
yeah.
out. Yeah. Well, and there was I follow this one comedian, and she was just on her new special talking about the first rejection that you have as a girl, and like how you always remember that first rejection. And she's like, every woman in this audience just thought of that first person who they were like, yay, yay, and that person was like, get away from me. And I mean, maybe it's that experience in boys, but they don't know how to deal with it, so they're just like, it's me, it's society, and then
Right,
they're
right. And
frustrated.
so if we were to go along that line, what would be a healthier way for a boy to express that rather than totally shutting down or totally, disregarding girls or
Right,
whatever? It's like, you know,
right. Yeah, talking about it,
yeah,
yeah, and kind of refiguring maybe their game, or like just feeling the grief, sitting with their grief and having to, go through it, because unfortunately we all have to learn how to sit with
we
our
do.
feelings when
We
they're
do. We
uncomfortable.
do. And there are many
Yeah,
things,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
for lots of boys, it's, being the star athlete or I don't know, whatever it is, that young kids aspire to. And that's great. But not everybody's going to be able to have that opportunity. And so we all have to figure that out. Okay, I'm not going to be the Steph Curry.
yeah. uh,
Not everyone is going to be, the world-class basketball athlete. But how can you take your passion, your
oh
energy,
yeah,
your interest,
yeah.
and do something positive with that? Be a coach.
I'm thinking in that case you would probably find something in broadcasting, or you'd be at ESPN, or you might be
Yes,
a basketball coach. Like, no one says that you have to be the star. And I think when I think about like reformulating schools and stuff, just like, it's okay to be a C student. Like, when you have the when you have the basketball team, you still have to have other players who aren't the best to carry the team, and to get there. Like,
absolutely.
like we can't all be A students. Like, that shouldn't be,
I know.
that shouldn't be a thing. But it also, if we are saying that boys look for that external validation, you know like having that conversation with the boy about, yes, you got to see on this, you either you work harder on this or you just know that this isn't your thing. And that should be okay. Like you may always get C's in English or you may always get D's in math. It may
Right.
not be your strong point.
Right.
That's
Right.
okay.
Absolutely.
know? Yeah.
Yeah. And I would love to
So
see
acceptance.
boys be
Yeah.
more, we talk about how to increase empathy or emotional intelligence. And I know that it's competitive for
Right.
boys. They're always comparing how tall, how fast, how smart, these other boys are.
Ooh,
I get it. I
right.
understand that.
Yeah.
Um, but I think
Yeah.
at the same time, boys really need to support one another, and I think they get that in team sports sometimes, which is good.
Oh, yeah.
But I was thinking, Vanessa, like,
Right.
if you imagine um, like a teenage girl at her locker at school, and she's crying, and she's just distressed, and you could tell that she's really upset. Now, how many
Right.
students or even faculty might go up to that girl to try to check in on her? So if we were just to imagine that, I could see
Right.
other girls going, her friends.
Right.
I could see maybe a teacher. Now, if that were a boy, if that were a teenage boy and he was at his locker and he was just really broken up about something, now how many boys would go up to try to
Yeah.
console him? Or how many girls or how many staff?
Right.
And it's that strict
Right.
male code, that boy code, that mask of masculinity. Oh, he'll figure it out. He's tough. I don't want to embarrass him. I say,
Right.
screw that. Do just the opposite. Someone's in distress, you go and you
Right.
check in. And I don't know, here again, I know I'm nuts about Steph
Right.
Curry, but that's the kind of person that I see him being. Someone on his team is hurting or something's going on. He is the star of that team, but he doesn't, that's not his whole identity. He cares about those other players. He cares
Oh,
about their
right. Right.
kids and
Yeah.
their families. The whole organization is that way. So I guess my point, is that how can
Oh,
we
right.
help
Right.
boys? Well, boys can help other boys too. And we need, as adults to
Yeah.
affirm that, you know, boys need to
We do.
we
We do. We
don't.
don't do that
We
enough.
don't. So
Yeah.
that's one thing I'd really like to
Yeah.
see change. And the other thing too, in
Oh,
thinking
yeah.
about that, so
Definitely.
if we think, well, why don't boys do that? Well, they think that the other boy should be able to handle his grief or whatever. The other thing, oh, they don't want to be seen as being
Right. Right.
too sensitive or too weak or whatever. And that's where I
Right.
think that really needs
Right.
to change in our heads, is that no, that's not being weak, that's not being sissy, that's being compassionate, that's being strong and standing up for a
Yeah.
friend or someone that's got something going on. That's being a
That's
decent
sport.
human being. you know
Yeah.
uh, so
Yeah.
I don't know, it's just like I said, there's lots of different trains of thoughts on this, but I'm just always going to go for being,
Right.
JBK, just be kind, humankind, be human and kind,
Right.
right?
Right.
Humankind.
Well, and I think that, like that is definitely, emphasized. I'm a Cub Scout leader. So like, in the Cub
Yeah.
Scouts, that's, like that togetherness, that, hey, help support each other, type of thing is definitely, encouraged. But of course, like not all
Right.
boys are going to be in Cub Scouts, and now Cub
Right.
Scouts is open to girls. So like not all girls and boys will be in Cub Scouts, but like there are organizations that are about, collaborative work, and what, and emphasizing what people's
Right.
strengths are,
Right.
you know. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Yeah. But it does seem like few and far between. For California, for the schools, are they still doing a lot of testing? Because I know in Connecticut they do some testing, and they do it at least yearly and often.
I
um
I think it's
yeah, but I wasn't sure
the
if that's
core curriculum or whatever, I think is what it's called. So yeah.
gotcha.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's another thing I keep,
Okay.
trying to stress is we need a more emotional social component daily in our schools. Academics is great and that's important, but
Right.
that's not the
Yep.
whole picture. And our kids are in school for so long. Our
Right.
kids
Right.
spend so much time in school. It's like, wow.
Oh yeah.
So,
Yep. And now it's very digital, and like I just worry so much about all of the digital stuff that we have, and I really don't think that anyone at a certain age understands privacy or copyrights, and I think that's going to get a lot of people in trouble, because they're just going to feel like it's perfectly okay to live stream anywhere, and that may not be the reality of the
yeah,
situation.
I think kids are so bombarded with so much social media and so much stuff online. And I mean, as we've all talked about,
Oh
spending
yeah.
all that time can be addictive. It's taking away from face to face, communication. And then also, like you said, there are predators out there. Kids can fall into traps and get taken advantage of, and
Right. Oh
yeah,
gosh,
end
yeah.
up in juvenile hall, because they've taken a photo of their
Yeah.
girlfriend or whatever and posted it. And they think they're sending it to just a couple people, ends up going to everybody in the school. And yeah, and kids don't know. They just don't.
Right.
They don't know anything about that. They don't know that they're doing anything wrong until the police show up,
No.
and then it's like, oh,
Right, right. I've totally had that happen to a client of mine where, yeah, very, very same situation. Oh, I'm just gonna, send this boy this thing, and then the police were called because someone was like, what was
right,
that on your
right,
Snapchat just now? What? So attentive parents, yay, but kind of a scary situation,
right.
um, yeah, of just, oh my God, that no,
Ah, I know.
yeah, yeah. Well, and I know like another client too, like she just didn't understand that like I didn't always have this technology to, have a camera on my phone or anything, and I was out of high school by the time camera phones came around. But I remember, like, how is this going to relate to bullying? How are we going to prevent this from happening in locker rooms? Like, what are we doing to protect our to protect our privacy? And it just kind of went on and went on and went on, and now we've had this
Right,
technology for over a decade now, and it's just kind of like, okay, but we still need to talk about like these things aren't safe. They can be hacked. Even if you think everything's so
right.
private, it can be all taken away. And and I don't know if students really really understand that at this point, because it's there, it's available, it's been
Right,
available.
right,
You
right.
know.
No, I wish that there were classes on that, on sexting and appropriate, dating and consent and all that kind of stuff. And
Ooh,
there just isn't. And then a
oh
lot of
gosh, yeah,
parents feel uncomfortable talking
yeah.
about that, or maybe they've had their own trauma in their past, and so they can't really talk about it. And it's
Oh
like,
yeah,
yeah, I don't know, it's a big issue.
yeah. Well, and maybe some parents honestly don't know, maybe I still have a friend that has a flip phone. He is not about going on the internet. He is not about social media. So like if he had children, he would not know how to talk with them about anything much,
Right,
like,
right.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Every generation has its
I know.
challenges, I guess. It seems like we've got a lot, but uh,
We do. And like, I just wonder sometimes, how are we even going to measure how all of this media consumption from a young age is going to change the brain, because we can't even keep up with it, that, like,
I
can't
know,
study it
I
fast
know.
enough. Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right. Well, I feel like we hit a good point to stop.
Did you do
So it was really nice
I
talking with
know,
you.
Vanessa, do we have the
Yeah.
time to just go over? I think one of the things we talked about is things that we can do, a few things that we can do to help encourage emotional development in kids? Do we have a little bit of time?
Oh, yeah, we should
Okay.
totally talk
Okay.
about that.
So,
Yep.
okay, these are just kind of a few things that I've put together, and then I want to go over a few points from a really good article from the New York Times. So, some things that I encourage all of us to do is pay attention to your child's temperament and interests. Expose them to lots of different activities and
Ooh.
experiences, but if they're drawn to sports or they're drawn to art, encourage that. What you and I talked about. Young boys already have built-in sensitivity, caring, and tenderness. It's not anything new for them. They're born knowing how to be emotional. We, as caregivers and adult role models, need to support them to continue to express their emotions and be whole human beings. Allow them to cry. Allow them to be afraid or anxious. It's human. When boys are in touch with their own feelings, get support from caring adults and friends, and can self-soothe and have empathy for themselves, they are in turn able to have empathy for others. That's one of the greatest traits boys can have in forging friendships, working well with others, and developing close romantic and family relationships. Concentrate on letting your boys be kids first. Worry about being a man later. We tell our boys, act like a man. We don't tell our girls, act like a woman. Encourage boys to use their words, which we talked about, to identify their feelings and self-soothe. Okay, let them, and then we talked about letting boys, write reports about blowing things up or whatever, as long as it's, it's not terrorism, just things that they're interested in. Let them explore that.
Right, right.
Um,
Yeah.
when
Oh, yeah.
very young, ask boys and girls, how many? How many ducks are on the lake? And what color? What are the colors in that flag? But also ask, how is that person feeling? And how are you feeling? A friend at school maybe lost their lunch money.
Oh, yeah.
Ask your kid, how do you think they're feeling? Also, after watching a TV show or movie, parents can talk with their kids about how certain characters felt at certain times and do that with boys and girls. Okay,
Oh,
create
yeah.
buddy benches at school so no kid feels left out on their own or unaccepted. Use the app so kids can communicate privately with one another so no one feels embarrassed or singled out. I think that's one of the biggest things we really need to look at when we talk about school shooting and that kind of thing. It's the kid that's been left
Oh,
out,
yeah.
that's been bullied, that doesn't have anyone to talk to, that comes from a poor family environment. If we can do more at schools to
Right.
include kids
Yeah.
and whatever, I think that would help us a lot. And then
Oh, yeah,
there's
definitely.
12 points from this article, How to Raise a Feminist Son, New York Times. I like to call it How to Raise Emotionally Healthy Boys. Number one, let him cry.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Dad, you've seen that. I love this article. Two, give him role models. Three, let him be himself. Four, teach him to take care of himself. Five, teach him to take care of others. Six, share the work. It's good for boys to see their moms and their dads working together, washing the windows, washing the car, whatever. Encourage friendships with girls.
Oh, yeah.
Teach no means no. And they made a good point in the article is that even with your own kid, if you're tickling or wrestling or whatever, if your little boy says, okay, stop, or that's it, then stop. If he's saying no or stop, then stop. Um, Speak
Right.
up when others
Right.
are intolerant. Read a lot, including about girls and women. Never use girl as an insult and celebrate boyhood. So those are some
Yay.
those are some things we
Oh,
can
yeah.
do.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I
Good.
agree with all of those. Yep. Yep. Oh, yeah. And I think I would hope that some of the places that the kids are or boys are feeling disenfranchised would hopefully have something where they do have a man in their life who they can look up to, and who will kind of be there to encourage them, because
I know.
sometimes it is the single mom, it's they're at school and it's a kind of a female, community, I guess. And then, like who do they have to look to, to kind of, know how to do
I
the
know.
things because, single moms can't always tell them the things that
Totally.
they
Yeah.
need.
And I mean,
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of
Yeah.
counselors on school campuses. I did that and I loved it. And so
Mhm.
here again, I always stress, social emotional component at schools, physical activity for kids at schools, and counseling for
Oh
boys,
yeah.
girls, whoever needs it. And I don't know, I'm sure you've
Yeah.
heard of,
Whoever needs that. Yeah.
oh, I've got another quote for you. This book, Real Boys Voices. Okay,
Yeah.
well,
Oh yeah.
I love this book. So that's one of the things he talks about is having safe places for boys. And I don't know exactly how you would do that, but
Oh
on a
yeah.
school campus, just have a safe room for a boy to go to and talk to someone.
Yeah. Safe
Right,
room.
right.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
And then
definitely.
I've got this.
Um, I went to
Go ahead.
I went to a children's museum one time, and at the children's museum, they had they had a safe room in there where like if you just needed to sit down away from everyone else and calm down, like it was all blue. It had some books, and you could just sit down for a little bit. And I just like I hadn't seen that in a children's
That
museum
is
before, and
so
I thought that was so
excellent.
great.
That is wonderful. I love it.
Yeah.
So I think our
Yep.
schools should have that.
Yeah.
So Vanessa, I've got one great
Oh yeah,
quote here
definitely.
for you. It's from Albert Einstein.
All right.
So it's try not to
Great.
become a man of success, but rather try to become a man of value. I know.
That's
I
great.
know.
Yeah. We can
Yeah,
just
I
encourage all of
know.
that. Yeah. All right. So yes, I think we're at a good stopping point. Great quote to end with, of course. So yes, oh, I'm so glad that I got to talk to you and
Thank
do this because yeah, we're on the same page
I know,
about a lot of
kindred
different things.
spirit. Thank you.
So yeah,
Thank you, Vanessa, for doing this.
yeah,
I really appreciate it.
yeah, no problem. I'm always glad to like get, the men's mental health aspect out
Thank
and
you.
into the world, because definitely it can be a focus.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Yep. Yeah, no
We
problem. All
will.
right,
We
we'll
will.
talk
Okay.
soon.
Bye.
All right, bye.
I don't know.
Oh, how do I do this? Nothing's coming up. Okay. Oh my God. Why is this so? All right.
Finish.